Welcome back to the 24th floor. 1 week of high school football, and we've already got some explaining to do.
Yeah, you see, the team that opened up the year number one in the Daily Memphis, Dandy Dozen. Sorry, I got to go over here. It's already 0-1. Collierville turned it over 5 times, scored just 7 points, and a loss to East Nashville. Not a good game.
A 19-7 loss. I was at that game. Meanwhile, Southwind won its 17th straight regular season game. But Lausanne gave the Jaguars all they could handle in his first game without Thomas Hefner. Those weren't the only things that got our attention. Joining us now is a friend of the program, called by some around the Mid-South, the Adam Schefter of the Mid-South prep world. He is the Daily Memphis. John Varlas is back with us. John, always a pleasure to have you.
Are you good at being compared to Adam?
I would be good with his bank account.
I was going to say. That guy's got some money.
Well, I assume more than me, I would hope, after all this time.
So, John, I tell you all the time how much I read your work, how much I learn so much about the Mid-South prep world through you, the conversations we have in person, the things I read, your articles. When I was trying to refresh and get into that mode, I read a lot of your stuff. And you said before the season that Collierville was probably the team to beat around here in 6A. After 5 turnovers in that 19-7 loss in week 1, I remember I was telling you on the sideline, what's going on with this team? What happened?
Well, I mean, it happens. You know, that teams come out flat, Richard, and you know, I don't want to speculate on what was going on because I don't know. You know, I'm not there in the locker room or the practices or anything like that. But, I mean, they just came out flat. And I think, you know, they're still 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids at the end of the day, and maybe they weren't focused for whatever reason. And East Nashville's a good team too.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I'm not taking anything away from them. You know, you look at a 2A school versus 6A school. Well, you say the 6A school should win, and it probably should. But East Nashville's quality, and you know, they came out on that first drive and marched it right down the field and kind of hit Collierville in the mouth, and they never really recovered from it. But you know, I still got a lot of faith in Collierville. Nobody won a state championship on Friday, and nobody lost it. So everything is still right there in front of them.
That Covington kid. I was telling Ruben.
That looks like bad tackling.
No, well, they definitely didn't tackle well. Dallas Covington's a terrific player, and I think Western Kentucky's kind of getting a bit of a steal with him, you know, coming in to play quarterback for them. He's really darn good, and you know, the defensive back they had, Richard, number 0. He
picked off Braden a lot.
He did, and he held Tay Walden to just 1 catch. And
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I mean, he had a great. You know, they had some really talented kids, and you know, they weren't. You know, they weren't intimidated by the moment or the crowd or the you know, the occasion, and they just came in here and played good football.
Some of this has got to be on. I mean, first of all, give East Nashville some serious credit for showing up ready to play. But it just, when I'm watching these highlights, I don't see a fired up Collierville team defensively. I'm not seeing, I mean, you're trailing, there's a wide open spot in the middle of the zone.
That was really his only passing play he really did.
It doesn't look like they're playing the way that I watched them play last year. And they've got a ton of talent. Collierville has a ton of talent and size and speed and skill.
They do, and if I know those coaches over there, Ruben, I think they're going to figure it out this week. Now, it's a big challenge, you know, going down to Oxford and playing a really good Oxford team, and but still, I do think they're going to figure it out. And like I said, I've still got a lot of faith in this team. Like, too much talent, like you say, you know, a quarterback going to Iowa, Braden Santibanez, an Oregon receiver, you know, Tay Walden, a UT Martin running back, Larry Johnson, you know, huge O-line, huge D-line, you know, just talent all over the field. And, you know, I still got faith, and they'll figure it out.
Let's get it. So I was telling Ruben this. I was surprised that Tay didn't get more targets. It seemed like they really wanted to give Larry the ball and were working the run game. Yeah. And when they started targeting Tay, it was almost too late because East Nashville saw it coming and was able to send like doubles at him.
I mean, it was just a really weird game too, Richard. You know, from starting late with the weather. And, you know, we hope everybody's still recovering from that. But starting late from the weather, and then, you know, it seems like East Nashville kept trying to hand Collierville the game, and Collierville wouldn't take it. You know? I mean, you know, especially there in the second half. I think Collierville, you know, tightened things up defensively in the second half. I think they tackled a lot better in the second half, and East Nashville really didn't move the ball as well in the second half. So the game was there. for them, but they for whatever reason they just couldn't take advantage of it. And I just go back to the fact that it's kids. I mean, you know, I write about these kids, but I can write about anybody. These coaches are making their livelihoods off these 15 and 16 and 17-year-old kids, and you know, it's the kind of stuff that maybe makes you pull your hair out sometimes. Nights like Saturday.
Yeah, I think sometimes people don't understand the flow that goes into a football game too, especially from a play calling standpoint. You know, they may have went in with an idea of how they wanted the script to be, and then East Nashville may have flipped that on them and not allowed them to run that script. And then you're kind of playing catch up and trying to figure out what is going to work and how it's going to work. And so that's why defensively, if you can at least lock in, you can stay in the game, which is what they really did. They stayed within reach of the game. Yeah. Just could never quite get going offensively.
Yeah, and East, you know, from what folks have told me, East Nashville is, you know, they're used to playing teams like Collierville in their area.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to schedule, so they play the Antiochs of the world and some of these other, you know, bigger
Nothing new to them.
Really good. Yeah, it's not new to them at all. And you know, I like their team, and I think they're going to be a problem in 2A for sure. I mean, we got some 2A teams in our area that have some state title aspirations.
Like Fairleigh, we just got done with.
Fairleigh, Mace, you know, we got some good 2A teams in our area, but you know, East Nashville is going to be a tough out for anybody.
Yeah. Now let's switch gears to two other teams who have title aspirations, Southwind and Lausanne. Yeah. You was at that game. Now we thought about going to it for week one. We wanted to switch things up.
Yeah.
Southwind won 36-28. It was a shootout. I don't think anybody expected that after the news with Thomas Hefner. Southwind extended that regular season winning streak to 17. What did you see from the Jaguars that reinforced why you were so high on them coming into the year?
Well, it's just gonna be different this year, Richard. And obviously with Kelvin Perkins, it's got to be different. You lose the best the player in the history of the school, without question. It's going to look a lot different. I think, you know, talking to Coach Griffin in the preseason, you know, last year with Kelvin, they were more 60-40 passing. This year it might be more 64 running with Kamani Williams at running back. And he had an 88-yard touchdown run on the first series of the game, kind of got them going on the right foot. And obviously that great offensive line they have.
Yeah, you call them the U-Haul boys.
Well, they call themselves the U-Haul boys. That's what they call themselves. But Antonio Kiefer and Zacchaeus Ratliff and Big Chris Campbell and those guys. I mean, that's three college guys right there that I just named. They've already committed. So yeah, you got a big O-line like that. You got a running back like Kamani Williams. I would ride that horse as much as I could. But yeah, and Lausanne, you know, it was 36-14. Lausanne came back and made it a one-possession game there at the end. And, you know, full credit to those guys for having to adjust on the fly when
can we just touch base on the craziness that is? That in case you don't know, Thomas Hefner ruled ineligible just days, really, before the season kicks off. So then your star wide receiver, Lawrence Britt, has to step in and be quarterback at that point.
And they kind of actually knew.
They prepared for that a little bit.
Well, they knew that the thing with Thomas was pending, you know, before it became public. So they had a little more preparation time, you know, than maybe we think they did. And you know, they were just waiting on that appeal to see if it would go through, but they knew it was a possibility that they wouldn't have Thomas. So they were able to prepare about a week or so, you know, but still.
That's still not a
team
ton
like
of time,
Southwind.
I mean, you're taking Lawrence Britt away from being a wideout, which is what he's going to college to play.
You are, and he's their best option at quarterback though, because the backup the quote unquote real quarterback is young and inexperienced. So Lawrence certainly gives them the best option to win, and I think they will still be very good going forward because he can do things with his legs and. You know, from that position that, you know, maybe he'll throw some different wrinkles in there and that kind of thing. But you're right, it takes away a great weapon in the passing game, and those guys will figure it out. But the way they were able to adjust on the fly and score 28 points against, and it was a one-possession game.
Yeah,
they recovered
I was following your tweets. Yeah. It came all the way down to the end.
No, they
had a chance.
8 points behind. And, you know, a funny story, too, Lawrence, you know, he took a bit of a beating in that game, you know, just lots of hard hits and, you know, just fair, good football. But he took some hits and typically he would be on the hands team. So they go out for that onside kick trailing by 8 points. You know, and the coaches are like, no, we'll put somebody else in there, Lawrence. You know, you're our quarterback. We can't have you out there on the hands team, and you've been beat up all game. And Lawrence basically said, you know, the heck with that, guys. I'm out there. And he recovered the onside kick.
Wow.
Really good onside kick by Hank Smith. And
he's just a football player.
He's just a football player.
He's just a football player.
That's the moral of the story.
Yeah, we call him the quarterback whisperer. So there's a dude in town who trains some guys. We call him the quarterback whisperer. But his phrase is, you just got to go be the guy. Go be a guy.
Yeah.
And that's what that sounds like.
And Lawrence is a guy. Antonio Huntsman Jr. is a guy. Linebacker, running back. Keon Cooper's a guy, the K-Train. I mean, he's a guy.
I like that K-Train.
Yeah, K-Train. All aboard the K-Train.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to use that.
Yeah, but no, they've got guys over there that, you know, speaking of big offensive lines, they've got some terrific size at Lausanne as well. They're just young. I mean, 4 of those guys were starting for the first time, and 3 of them are sophomores, and so that's always going to be hard. But they'll be fine. They really will.
So you was at Southwind Lausanne. We had a couple of games ourselves, but neither that we was at was particularly close. Let's start with our game of the week. Houston beating Germantown 40-6. After going 3-8 last year, how much did Houston impress you in that game against Germantown?
Well, I kind of had a feeling Houston was going to be much improved this year. I mean, just because last year they played so many sophomores and even some freshmen in some key spots. And the coaches will probably tell you this, Richard, you know, with the schedule they had last year, it just wasn't conducive to success with a young and inexperienced team. So, you know, they took their lumps in a lot of cases, but these guys coming back a year older, a year wiser, a year better. You know, right, Darius Robertson there.
Double R.
He's gonna have a big season.
He went for 126, 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, and you know, and Cannon Day at quarterback. I mean, he's really, really good. You know, the O-line that they have, I mean, they've got a terrific O-line. That's going to be a theme this year. We got some really good O-lines in town, and Houston is right up there with the best of them. But and they've got a great defensive coordinator too. Coach Kleeman over there does a terrific job, and to hold Germantown to just 83 total yards, I mean, that speaks volumes.
Yeah. We see Rodarius scoring a touchdown right here. Has he put himself into the conversation as one of the best players in the area?
Well, he is, and you know, in the preseason, talking with Coach Thomas and the guys out there, I mean, you know, they've had some great running backs out there at Houston. You know, you guys will remember Lincoln Perry, who actually won Mr. Football several years ago. You know, Damon Sissa, who was MVP of the Blue Cross Bowl when they won state a couple of years ago. I mean, you know, they think Rodarius has a chance to be as good as all of them. Like you were saying, Ruben, you know, he just walks out there and you can tell he's a dude.
Yeah, he's
right?
a dude, man. He's a football dude.
It's just all over.
And it helps when you got them big old linemen.
It does.
Creating a space for you. And Houston, I was out there, and Houston definitely looked much improved from last year. Almost entirely from youth, and that Coach Thomas said the same thing. Hey, when he was here last week with us, he said, hey, we were young. We took some lumps while we were young. We'll be better. He was right. They are better. But Germantown just didn't look like Germantown. I mean, let's just be honest, that's the flip side of that. Germantown has lost some bodies after a coaching change and some movement.
They have. And I really hope the fans over there are patient with Coach Sutton, because I think, you know, Deron Sutton's one of our finest coaches. He's been doing this a long time, and he wouldn't have been doing it for as long as he has if he hasn't been, you know, successful and good.
Battle tested.
And battle tested, So, I mean, in time, I think Germantown's going to be really good, and probably even by the end of the season, I think we're going to see a lot better team on the field than what we saw Friday night. But I just hope they're patient with him, because he did lose some guys, but there's still some really good pieces over there. You know, the Simmons brothers and some guys on that defense. They've got some good size up front. They got a defensive end going to committed to SEMO or Missouri. I always get those two mixed up. But anyway, he's a college guy.
Is he going to be a Bear, or is he going to be because Bear would be Missouri State.
Yeah, and you know, can't forget Peyton Ballard. He's one of the best linebackers, and you know, he's an all-state type of linebacker guy who's been there, you know, his whole career. So yeah, there's lots of talent at Germantown. I just hope they're patient with him and give him a chance to coach those guys up.
Now, I know they're trying to wrap us into there, but I kind of want to keep this going. Let's get on another game that we was at, and that's Central shutting out Melrose 42-0. That was the game I was at. That was a game that originally was going to be our game of the week, and we ended up pivoting. I'm not going to tell y'all why. That's a little inside baseball. But I read your article. This was the first time Melrose has been shut out in 25 games.
Yeah.
And as I was telling Ruben, Melrose seems to have never been able to beat Central. So I always said there's levels to it, but answer this for me, John. Is Central that good? Or was Melrose that concerning, or was it a little bit of both?
No, Central is really darn good. I mean, again, with Melrose, the coaching changed. They lost some guys they might have had, through transfers. But Central is really darn good. Coach Wright, Major Wright's got, his son is quarterback.
Brooks. I figured that was his son.
One of the best quarterbacks in our area, no doubt. But they're just so senior laden, and like you said, Richard, battle tested. Landon James and Josh Lane on the defensive line, who's committed to Memphis. They got 3 or 4 running backs that can make plays, 3 or 4 receivers.
Yeah, they were
that can
just
make
running
plays.
the ball down. And they even did the little Spider-Man celebration because they were just running the ball down Melrose's throat.
I really think with looking at their schedule and kind of projecting forward. With Germantown being, kind of rebuilding like we just talked about, with MUS being a little bit down, I really think Central has a chance to be 9-0 going into that week, that last regular season game against Munford, which will probably most likely decide the region title. I think Munford's got a chance to be 9-0.
Yeah.
I think.
Do they still got Tay over at Munford?
Tay Starks?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No,
that was the guy.
Munford's got like 10 running backs.
All they do is they remind me of Georgia Tech.
Well, it's a single wing. Yeah.
They remind me a lot of Georgia Tech's old offense.
So they keep running backs at Munford, but those two teams are on a collision course, and I think they're both really, really good. But no, Central's legit, I think.
Yeah. Well, I know we're way over time in this segment.
We gotta go. We gotta talk about some of our games.
Yeah, we'll do our games real quick.
Real quick, before we let you go, John, let's take a look at some of the other games we'll be watching in week 2. Houston Whitehaven jumps off the page. Mustangs, like we said, coming off that win over Germantown, while Whitehaven looking to bounce back after losing its opener to Innsworth. We didn't really talk too much about that. Ruben, keep it going on.
All right, Germantown tried to bounce back too. The Red Devils head to Bartlett, which is coming off a nice road win over MUS. Bartlett impressed some people, including yourself, I think, last week.
Entered the Dandy Dozen this week.
Yeah. Memphis East travels to Arlington. White Station gets a big early test at Christian Brothers, and that is a big test. Good luck with Nate Brick.
Yes.
That dude is legit. The Spartans are coming off a 40-0 win over Bolton.
And speaking of Bolton, they'll get Central, who we just talked about. And like John said, the Warriors couldn't have looked much better against Melrose with that 42-0 shutout. North Point Christian heads to MUS. Both teams looking for their first win of the season. Any of these games stick out to you, John? Tell the people where you're going to be at.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned Nate Brick, and he had such a great first game.
Yeah, I was there for that one.
Yeah, I mean, he's just so good. But, one thing White Station's got going for them, they got maybe the 2 best defensive ends in the city, with Antoine Jackson, who's committed to Ole Miss, and a kid named Jalen Daniels.
They make sure they have some DBs. Make sure you got some DBs.
Well, they do. They definitely need DBs, but my theory is maybe put some pressure on the quarterback with those great defensive ends.
And Nate's really, really good.
No, he's really good, but so I'm looking for. I think I might just go out to Christian Brothers and maybe see Nate myself, because that first game was.
That kid's got. I call him NBZ.
Almost 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in one half.
Yeah.
I don't care who the opposition is. You're doing something.
You're doing something right.
John, we always appreciate the insight, and I'm sure week 2 will give us plenty to talk about. As you know, you have a welcome invitation. Come on anytime.
Well, you guys just call me. I'm sorry.
Should be a weekly thing, brother. We'll be going through them every week.
Sorry we couldn't make it work last week, but
fine.
Hit me up.
It's even better. We got more to talk. We had something to really talk about.
Well, just let me know anytime you guys need.
We got you.
I'd be glad to do it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, high school football has had its turn. Now it's time for the Tigers.
Charles Huff Fair. I was seeing if that's where you were ending. The Charles Huff Fair officially kicks off Saturday when Memphis takes on UNLV. We have been waiting after an entire season of off-season of questions, position battles, which we still know no answers to. What's it going to look like?
Well, it's finally time to see it for real. John's co-worker, Frank Bonner, joins us to preview Memphis and UNLV. We'll react to the latest from Charles Huff. That's next on the 24th floor.